Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, Episode 4. And here we are holed up in the guest house because we don't really know where Kinzo and his accomplices currently are, you know? We don't know what place is dangerous and what isn't. I mean, the whole island is basically dangerous. We all know that for sure, but things really are taking a wild turn in this rendition of the story. Plus, Kumasawa is here, so I guess episode 3 was, that was supposed to just be a one-episode only deal where Virgilia was hiding within Kumasawa or whatever. I don't know. That was strange. That was weird. I could not have predicted that, so there's also that. Let us resume. Oh, yeah, but by the way, we also got to learn a little bit about a mysterious dungeon in the previous video. Ooh, who knows where that's at? But there's a lot of secrets here to this island, more than I ever thought there was. Anyways.
ありがとうございますね。ありがとうございます。申し訳ございませんが、しばらくそっとしていただけますか。
Maria tried to be nice, but it seemed that Kumasawa still hadn't been able to clear away her confusion.
Maria, 気を使ってくれてありがとうだぜ。Kumasawaさんは休ませてやってくれ。
Yeah, that poor soul just saw a lot of death. A lot of craziness. Jessica was also worried about the shock those two must have received after witnessing such a tragedy. But her wildest dreams couldn't even come close to the unbelievable scene Kumasawa had witnessed. Nevertheless, with her mother murdered and her father captured, it wasn't as though Jessica could stay calm either. She sealed her anxiety and sadness using her anger towards Kinzo, and walked irritably around the room. That's what I would do. Specifically, walk around irritably.
あんなひどい死に方を私は見たことがありませんとも。
I'm hoping you never saw somebody die. That's gotta be pretty traumatic.
手当てをすれば助かるなんてことはないんだよな。
頭があんなことになって生きていられるわけが。
Yeah, you know, I would have just said no instead of, you know, describing anything there. That was a bit too far, I think.
そりゃそうだぜ。頭が砕けちまったら手当てなんて必要ねえよな。
When Goda had come flying into the guest house, he had, overcome with agitation, told about the massacre in the dining hall without concealing anything. Except for the part about witches and magic, which they themselves still couldn't believe. In other words, he hadn't even sugarcoated the cold-blooded way in which Natsuhi and the others had died. It was too late now, but Kumasawa regretted the fact that they'd obviously said too much. However, while lightly shaking her head, and with a slightly painful laugh, Jessica spoke.
いや、むしろ話してくれたおかげで冷静になれたぜ。頭を砕かれちまったってところを伏せられてたら、私はひょっとすると生きてるかもしれないって言って、屋敷へ向かいじいさまに出くわして、ひょっとすると殺されてたかもしれない。
He actually wants to interview you.
一末の希望が命取りになった可能性だってあるわけさ。その意味では感謝してるよ。
本当に申し訳ございません。言葉をあまりに選ばなかったことはお詫びします。
今はいいよ。母さんはもうどうしようもないけど、父さんはまだ生きてる。カノン君もシャノンもキリエおばさんも南條先生もね。なんとか彼らを助けたいし、彼らに負担をかけないためにも余計なことをするべきではない。電話の前で待機してることが今は一番の協力になるかもしれないし。
They might receive a phone call asking them to create a diversion while the others escaped. Or the others might discover their location and call for rescue. Jessica understood that in order to act promptly when that time came, The only thing that they could do for the time being was to wait in this room. Hello. Once they had finished inspecting the downstairs area and locking up, George, Battler, and Goda returned. Each was holding various objects. George had things like drinks, canned food, crackers, and other types of snacks that he had found in the lounge and a storage room, as well as a first aid kit. They were all consumables that would be essential during a siege. Goda had a large folding ladder and carpentry tools. Those were to seal the door from the inside, just in case. If it came to it, the ladder was for escaping out the window. Battler had brought up objects that could be used as edged weapons or poles. In addition to the obvious kitchen knife, there was a disassembled table leg that could be used as a club, and a pole roughly the size of a person, which he'd apparently made by taking apart a hat stand. Even though the pole had no point, it could surely be used like a spear. There was a good chance that their enemies had guns, so it was dubious whether these would be of any use. But it was still better than not having them, and if having these could give them at least a little peace of mind, then they'd be useful for their calming effect. Then, the bed and sofa were placed up against the door, barricading it. They didn't go so far as to seal it up with nails. There was still a chance that Kraus and the others would escape and come to meet up with them. They had apparently set up a barricade at top of the stairs as well, at the top of the stairs. It had been set up in a way that would create a racket, so it would serve as a warning alarm as well. That had apparently been Battler's idea. For that reason, they turned the TV off. This way, if the first floor window were to be broken, they would hear. Once the switch had been turned, all that was left was an eerie silence. Well, time to stay awake all night. The sound of violent wind and rain. Were they going to have to spend the whole night being crushed by such suspense? The boat would come tomorrow morning. However, judging by the weather report, most of tomorrow was going to be covered in the typhoon, and the boat probably wouldn't come. The typhoon was set to pass by in the morning of the day after tomorrow. In other words, the boat would be arriving in the morning after next, the morning of October 6th, the day of which we can never seem to make. And right now, it was late at night on October 4th. They would have to spend more than 30 hours on this island, with Kinzo turned cold-blood murderer and his weird companions prowling about. Yeah, this is actually a very unique scenario compared to the other stories, because in the other renditions of the story, we've always had it where they would find the victims of the first Twilight the morning of the 5th, and then they would just have to try to survive the entire day. That never seems to happen. We are starting much, much earlier. We're still on the 4th. We still have to go through the entire rest of the night, then the morning, the afternoon, and then, of course, in that evening or night, that's when everything is just gonna suck pretty bad. Even with the shutters closed, there would definitely be a little bit of light seeping out. It might let the enemy know that they were hiding here. Battler suggested that it might be best to turn off the lights, but they had already been overwhelmed by a ghastly feeling just from turning the TV off. There wasn't anyone who directly challenged his proposal, but then again, there wasn't a single other person who agreed with it. Wait, why didn't they, turn on the lights in other rooms then, to give off the idea that, okay, they were utilizing maybe the whole house, so they wouldn't target this specific room, but maybe just, downstairs to start, and then they'd have to try to find them. They wouldn't have the upper hand necessarily, but also, we're talking about magical beings here. They're gonna find these people.
ああ、悪いが我慢してくれ。敵の侵入の音を聞き逃すわけにはいかない。
つまんない。
Boring is right. Even though she had been told of her mother's death, Maria alone didn't feel an approaching sense of danger. She just seemed to be upset that the TV had been turned off. Even though she's in such a bizarre situation, she cannot share in our sense of danger? Is it because that she's so young? To Battler, even this faintly unsettling feeling from such a young girl made him sense that there was something very eerie about Maria. Yeah. Absolutely on that one, man. Absolutely. All right, back in the dungeon.
とは言ったものの、万策尽きたわね。鉄格子はなんとかなりそう？
残念だが、想像以上に堅牢だ。いつ頃に作られたものか知らんが、耐用年数も文句なし。実に有料な物件だよ。
Kirie chuckled softly. They had no moves they could make, but she had calmed just a little.
さながらここは取られた駒を置く。打つ手はもはやありませんか。
まだよ。諦めるには早いわ。
Yeah, we are still on the game board somehow.
思考の停止は鼓動の停止に同じよ。
だな、チェスの駒置き場に意味はないが、将棋ならば大きな意味を持つこともある。駒置き場の一枚の歩が、相手にプレッシャーを与えることだってあるはずだ。
なるほど。しかし、この鉄格子はどうしようも。
私たちにはね。でも、ここの場所を特定し、合田さんに連絡することができれば、助けに来てもらうことはできるかも。
However, that is specifically what Kinzo wants.
なるほど。
He wants them out in the open. Because going off of the logic that we learned in episode 3, if that is still going to be taking effect here, the more people that you have around that do not believe in magic, witches, and all that, it's a bit of a poison. So what Kinzo came out and did shouldn't work. But then that also begs the question, how is it that he was able to have all these magical beings do what they did, you know? Because there were a whole lot of people there that didn't believe in any of that. Unless because that they were doubting Kinzo's, Kinzo being alive, maybe they were already thinking of the unrealistic scenarios.
しかし合田さんに
The
危険
unknown.
を強いることになりますな。
I don't know.
その場合、成人男性が不在になるゲストハウスのお子さんたちも不安です。
リスクを恐れるなら、事態が好転するまで塩漬けにするのも悪くない。もっとも、損切りを恐れれば、紙切れ同然になるかもしれんがね。我々の命がだが。
親の子犬もね。私たちで何とかするからおとなしくしていなさいって偉そうに電話して、その下の根も乾かないうちに助けを求めるなんて、実に格好悪いわね。
この後に及んでは、くだらんプライドなどとっくに紙切れだ。知恵を絞ろうじゃないか。ここはどこなんだ。本当に食堂の真下なのだろうか。
I highly doubt it.
それとも、屋敷とは異なる別の場所だろうか。
Kraus, Kirie, and Nanjo began to discuss this further. Going back to the previous video, they were also discussing the time. So they were saying that there wasn't really a whole lot of time between, then and now. And it's possible that their clocks had been adjusted. But the thing is, Goda and Kumasawa got to the guest room and they picked up the phone when these guys were calling. I don't think that a huge amount of time has passed either, which really does beg the question, how did they get to this place and where is this place? There's a lot of, it's really difficult to piece this to a realistic scenario. Kanona was squatting by the bars, silently trying to sense anyone's presence, just as he had been ordered. Shannon came close to him and they both squatted down together.
気配は感じるの？
Oh.
こちらに意識は向けていないけれど、比較的近くに誰かいる。それは人間？ヤギたちだと思う。
Ooh.
あいつらの吐息は実に賑やかだよ。
Damn, this island just got overrun. Kanon's ability to sense the presence of others was several levels above that of a human. He said that their breathing was noisy, but Kraus and the rest couldn't even pick up the slightest hint of it. Therefore, if he had obediently reported it, they would have merely doubted Kanon's ears.
捕まっちゃったね。珍しいよ。殺されないで捕まるなんて。今回はベアトリーチェ様がお越しにならないし。
Yeah.
親方様が書斎を出られるし。
These are very Very strange oddities, huh?
何が何だかわかんないね。
わかるさ。何が起ころうと変わろうと。すべてあの魔女の気まぐれと余興。結果は何も変わらないのさ。
今回は黄金鏡に行けるかな。
So they speak in a way that makes it sound like that they are fully aware that this story has had multiple renditions. And it's kind of appeared like that even with the magical companions that have been popping up in recent episodes, like Renove and Vergilia.
さあね、僕たちは脱落率が
Like
高い
in
から
the story and outside of it, they are fully aware that, you know, this is all just another rendition of the story. What does that
そういえ
mean?
ば二人で第一の番を生き延びたのってずいぶん珍しいね。儀式が始まってるのにこうして二人でお話しできるなんてなんだかすごく珍しい気がする。
そうかもね。でもそれもまた魔女の余興だろうさ。僕たちがいつもすぐに脱落するから今度は少し生き延びさせてからかってやろうくらいにしか思ってないよ。
また黄金鏡にはたどり着けないのかな。
どうせそうさ。下手な期待を持つとまたつけ込まれる。
そうだね。前回はカノン君がつけ込まれたもんね。
僕はバカだ。
Oh yeah, I remember all that. Kanun made a sour look and turned his head. Shanun laughed softly and apologetically leaned towards his shoulder.
でもお嬢様が無事でよかったね。
第一の番を逃れただけさ。それ以降の番により無残な方法で殺されるのを待たされているだけかもしれない。それを言ったら姉さんこそジョージ様が無事でよかったじゃないか。二人で黄金鏡にたどり着けるといいね。
ありがとう。同じことをカノン君とお嬢様にも。
僕は期待はしてないよ。姉さんの言う通りだ。あの魔女はご褒美をぶら下げて相手が右往左往するのを見て楽しんでるだけなんだ。
Well, yeah.
どうせ誰も
That's her whole
黄金
deal.
鏡に行けやしない。僕がお嬢様と黄金鏡にたどり着きたいと願ってしまったならあいつはそれこそ面白がって絶対に僕たちをたどり着かせたりはしないさ。
そうだね。ベアトリーチェ様はより面白くなるように生贄の順番を考えてる。
無作為に選んでるなんて大嘘だ。
No, I'm definitely on the side of there being a reason for this order, you know? A reason that Kirie is also alive in this go-around, even so she was able to kind of put up a fight and use the old noggin in the previous episode.
あのペテン師魔女め。どうせ黄金鏡にたどり着けばあらゆる願いが叶うなんてのも。
そんなことはないよ。黄金鏡は素晴らしいところだよ。
行ったことあるの？
ちょっぴりだけね。それすらもベアトリーチェ様の戯れだったのだろうけど。
どんなとこなの？
うん。素晴らしいところだよ。うまく説明できない安らかな夢の中みたいな世界。
バラが咲き乱れてて美しい蝶が舞ってるような極楽みたいな感じ。
そういう具体的なイメージのところじゃないの。本当に夢の中みたいなところなの。そこにいるときはとても穏やかで安らかでいつまでも眠ってることを許されてる。まるで休日の早朝のお布団の中みたいな感じ。カーテンの隙間から日が差してきてそろそろ起きないと思うんだけど、今日は休日だから起きなくてもいいんだって気づいて、もう一回お布団の中に潜り込む時みたいな。
僕なら損したと思うな。休日なのに勘違いして起き出すなんて姉さんくらいだ。
Oh, you know what? That happens to me all the time now. I straight up am not allowed to sleep in. I constantly wake up thinking it's time to go to work.
それで？
うん。そこにいた時はね、満たされててとても穏やかだった。でも 元の世界に戻ってくると、つい直前までそこにいたはずなのに、うまく思い出すことができないの。ついさっきまで見ていた夢が思い出せないのによく似てる。でも、とっても穏やかで静かな世界だったことだけは覚えてるの。
それだけ？なんだ。あいつが偉そうに言う黄金鏡なんて、大したことないな。何でも願いが叶う場所だと思ってたのに。
その通りだよ。何でも願いが叶う場所。少し違うかもしれない。何も願わなくてもいい場所が正解かもしれないね。例えばカノン君が寒くて上着が欲しいと願った時、上着をもらえればとても幸せなことだけど、
I mean, I would have wished for it not to be cold.
そもそも暖かい部屋にいられたなら
Fuck the jacket, I just don't want it to be cold.
願う必要さえもないでしょ。黄金鏡はそういうところなの。
I know I'm missing the point there.
大抵の願い
Don't
は
worry, I'm just being
願う
silly,
必
per
要さえ
usual.
なくなる。全てから解放された何もかもが穏やかな世界なの。与えられて幸せという概念さえも超越した全てから解放された世界とでも言えばいいのかな。
なんだか宗教っぽい世界だな。
そしてそこでは全てが平等なの。意志ある存在は全てが平等。人間も家具も魔女もない。そこでの私は誰とも対等で公平。もう家具だからと何も自分を恥じる必要がない。全ての人間とも、そして魔女とさえ対等な本当に幸せな世界だったの。うまく思い出せないけど、そこでは私ベアトリーチェ様とさえ対等な関係で良い友達でいられた気がする。
あの魔女がいるならろくな理想郷じゃないよ。で、その幸せな黄金鏡に姉さんはジョージ様と一緒に行きたいわけだ。おかしな話だね。黄金鏡は全てが満ち足りた理想郷なわけでしょ。ジョージ様がいなくても十分に満たされてそうだけど。
He does bring up an interesting contradiction.
黄金鏡はね、とても穏やかで安らかで全てが対等で公平だけれど、幸せだけ実は抜けてるの。
幸せな世界じゃないの？
もちろん安らかで穏やかで公平というだけですごい幸せな世界だよ。でもそれは例えるなら全ての悩みというマイナスから解放されたゼロの世界なの。人の世はマイナスで満ちてるから、もちろんゼロというのはものすごい幸福なわけだけど、それでもゼロなの。贅沢だよね。それはこういう感じ。穏やかな休日の朝のまどろみの時、最愛の人も隣にいてくれて手を握っててくれたなら、もっともっと素敵な幸せになれる。ごめん、姉さんは例えが下手くそだね。
つまり
I mean, I was just going to relate it to like the expression of people saying, you know, money can't buy happiness. You can have all the money in the world, sure, and you can pay off a lot of your worries in life, you know, loans, debts, whatever, and afford a really nice place for you and your family, all of that. But at the end of the day, sure, you're in a wonderful state. You still can't get happy from that necessarily, you know? That can only come from, you know, other people.
姉さんにとっての最高の幸せとは、ジョージ様と一緒にその世界にたどり着くことってわけだ。
そしてきっとカノン君にとってはお嬢様と一緒にその世界にたどり着くことだよ。
公平な世界で二人は悩みから解放されなんだかおかしな宗教を吹き込まれてるみたいだ。僕はもっとこう俗物的な魔法の薬を与えられると人間に生まれ変われるとか、そういう感じの世界を想像してたよ。
行けばわかるよ。ベアトリーチェ様が本当に気まぐれな方なら、いつかきっとカノン君にも垣間見させてくれるに違いない。 そうすれば姉さんの例えがよくわかるようになるから。
Yeah, I don't think he's ever gonna get an opportunity. She really does not like Kanon.
ま、過剰な期待はしないことにしとくよ。いずれにせよ。今回の僕たちは、これでゲームオーバーみたいだし。
Not necessarily.
別の機会に期待するさ。
Because in episode 3, I thought that like George and Hideyoshi were going to be okay. But nope, those two were definitely killed off. Those that I thought would be okay were not.
そうだね。
So therefore, those that I thought would be, you know, fucked may not have been necessarily.
おかしな期待を持つと、
Though everybody was dying in the previous episode.
何も考えず、ただ運命に身を任せるのが私たちには一番かもしれない。
僕たちはただ何を考えても考えなくても、どうせ魔女のチェス盤からは逃れられない。後のお役目はどういびり殺されるか、ただ待つことだけさ。そんな僕らに
そうだね。ごめん。
Kanon shrugged his shoulders and then told Shannon to leave him alone because she was in the way of his duty, distancing himself from her. Realizing her thoughtlessness in bringing up such an inappropriate topic and instead hurting Kanon, Shannon bit her lower lip and stared at the ground. Shannon wouldn't bother him anymore. She went off and crouched down in a corner by herself. Ayo. At that moment, Kanon perked up. It was like the ears of a cat when it reacts to a strange sound.
どうしたの？
旦那様、誰か来ます。
Well, here we go. Here we go. They ended their conversation and strained their ears. For a while, they couldn't hear anything. But eventually, they were able to hear the shuffling sounds of a large group of people walking.
おいでなすったわね。
年貢の納め時か、さもなくも。
私が金蔵さんと話しましょう。なんとかここの場所を聞き出してみます。
期待してるわ。
During the last phone call, Kirie had asked what the time over at the guest house was perfect. By doing that, Kirie had learned that it was the same as her watch, and she had learned that their watches had not been set back, so they could not have been passed out. It wasn't just the clocks on the walls in the guest house. Several people's watches, including George's and Goda's, had matched. If that was the case, then it had only been a few minutes between the time of the massacre in the dining hall and the time they had been transported to the dungeon. Not enough time had passed for them to be knocked out and carried away. Then, were those really pitfalls, meaning that this was the area directly under the dining hall? All that they could do was pray that Nanjo could find out where this was.
来ます。多分、人数は4人。親方様。並びに、食堂に姿を現したうちの3人かと。
もう十分だ。君も後ろに下がりたまえ。あとは私たちで応対する。
シャノンちゃん、申し訳ないけど、電話のところに座ってもらえる？スカートで電話を隠して。
はい。
How is she? Oh, okay. She's just gonna stand in front of it. Or be in front of it. The shuffling came close, and there was the sound of a large door being opened in the hallway. The light that they were apparently carrying illuminated the hall, stroking the walls with sharp razor-like shadows. And then the light from the lantern they held illuminated the prisoners through the bars. The bars' sharp shadows divided them up lengthwise. There were 4 silhouettes. It was Kinzo, Renove, Virgilia, and Gap.
後宮家当主皆様ご静粛に。
ゴールドスミス？
親父殿のペンネームだ。怪しげな魔導書を書くとき、そういう名を署名しているようだ。
金蔵を英語風に？それならゴールドウェアハウスが正しいんじゃないの？
I think Goldsmith sounds a little bit better. And there he is.
ウェアハウスは倉庫、ただ溜め込むに過ぎぬ。しかし私は金を生み出し、細工し、さらに価値を高めるのだ。スミスの方がよりふさわしいと思わんかね？
確かに 無駄口を失礼しました。
金蔵さん、これはどういうことなんだね。ここは一体どこなんだ。
おや、我が友よ、思い出せんかね。さすがにその牢の中に入った経験はないだろうが、この廊下を歩いた記憶はあるはずだ。
まさか。
心当たりがあるの？
いや、しかし考えられない。第一、私たちは落とし穴に落ち、しかもほんの数分でここに閉じ込められたのですぞ。そんなことは物理的に、距離的にありえない。
人間にはね。
God damn.
お父さん、ここは屋敷ですか？屋敷にこんな地下があったとは。
フラウス、お前たちがその存在をささやき、何度か私の後をつけ回して探ろうともしたではないか。
So this is in the other mansion.
それがここだよ。いや、正確にはそこの地下というべきか。
まさかここはクワドリアンの地下ですか？
Kuadorian?
ご検察の通りです。こちらはクワドリアンの地下でございます。
クワドリアン、まさか噂の親父殿の隠し屋敷なのか？本当に実在したのか？
我が最愛の魔女ベアトリーチェのためだけに築いた屋敷である。
As we learned of in episode 3,
地上部分は美しき上品な屋敷なのであるが、そこを案内できず、実に残念に思うぞ。
こんな牢屋があるお屋敷で二人きりなんて素敵ね。どうもお父様とは性癖が合わないみたいよ。
キリエさん、無礼な発言はお控えになった方が賢明ですよ。
でも同感よ。私も送られた屋敷にこんな力があったら100年の恋も冷めて金目のものだけいただいてとんずらするわ。
おや、そういうご趣味はございませんか？てっきりキュンキュンしちゃうとばかり。
もちろんキュンキュンしちゃうわよ。誕生日のプレゼントに首輪なんかもらっちゃったりしたらね。ただしイケメンに限る。
alright.
お静かに。首輪より猿靴輪が必要ですか？
あら、あなたはそっちもいけちゃうの？
Not that way, Gap. Not that way.
リアって好き嫌いないのね。
勝手に人の名前を略さないでください。
やかましいぞ女たち。お前たちも同じ牢に閉じ込められたいというのか？
これは失礼いたしました、親方様。この牢体にこのような寒い牢獄では身が持ちません。
Vergilia quickly apologized, but Gap and Renove merely laughed together. It was like they thought they alone could not be imprisoned, or else, that even if someone tried to imprison them, it would be pointless.
牢とは捕らえ逃がさぬこと。それはすなわち生涯手放さぬとの強い意志と愛である。逃げても諦められる程度の女ならば愛を語るに値しない。鎖で縛ってでも逃がしたくないと思うほどに苦しくなる女。そこまでに至ってこそ我が生涯を捧げるに値する愛である。お前にそれを別れとは言わぬよ。
Good, I don't understand.
私
I don't think I ever could.
誰にも縛れない。愛されたいんじゃないの。愛したいの。私もゴールドスミスと同じよ。だからよくわかるわ。あなたの愛の狂気。
愛と狂気は紙一重というわけかね。実に旗迷惑な話だ。
しかしあっさり所在地が分かったのは大きいわ。詳しい経緯は後で聞くけど、南條先生はここをご存知なのね。
はい、そこの廊下がクワドリアンの地下通路ならば、あの先をまっすぐ行けば長い地下道になり、それをずっと歩けば 屋敷に戻れるはずだ。
この鉄格子さえ何とかできれば屋敷に帰れるってことね。
It's not going to be that easy.
お父さん、
Or likely.
私たちをどうするつもりですか？
Kill.
すでに宣告した通り、お前たちは後の番のための生贄である。都合よく人数も5人。えぐりて殺す5人の人質にぴったりであろう。
なるほど。私たちも年貢の納め時というわけですか。
やがてはな。だが今はそのために訪れたのではない。あ、それに言ったはずだ。もしも孫たちの誰かが我が全てを継承するにふさわしいと認められたなら、この儀式は中断する。
Unless they decide, yeah, let's just continue it. Which, if it's gonna be Maria, this shit's continuing for sure.
つまり、お前たちは命拾いをするというわけだ。
お子さんたちに何をするつもりですか？
次期当主にふさわしいかどうかテストを与える。その結果、私をうならせる者が一人でもいたならば儀式は中断する。
ふさわしい者がいなかったら子供たちはどうするつもりですか？
それを心配する必要はない。どうせ先に生贄とされるのはお前たちだ。
Oh, but of course.
その後のことなど知ったことではなかろうに、お前たちは自らの命運を自らの子供たちに委ねるのだ。お前たちが産み、教え、育ててきた結晶が子供たちだ。お前たちの命運を委ねるに実にふさわしい存在のはず。そう心配そうな顔をするなよ、クラウス。お前の自慢の100億の価値のある娘を信じろよ。
You know, actually, I was gonna say something that stuck out to me ever since Kinzo decided to descend from his study and actually partake in the story instead of just dying in the background like he tends to, is the fact that he's acting so different. We've seen him interact with some characters before, such as the end of episode 2 or with the servants in various episodes. But the way that he's acting here is just so different. The way that he kind of lengthens the names of people in like a teasing tone is something Beatrice does. So I think the Kinzo that we're seeing here is not actually Kinzo. But what does that mean in the... So let's say that is the case. This is not actually Kinzo. What does that mean in the sense of reality? What is this story that's being told to us? Maybe we don't need to necessarily try to piece together everything to try and make sense of it. We need to pick out the pieces that stick out the most, though. I like this face that he keeps on making. This is not the Kinzo that we know. The Kinzo we know should be dying a lot of the time because he can't breathe or he's been drinking too much alcohol. Here, this one is just batshit crazier than normal. We're missing too many traits, basically.
肝の座った女だ。ルドルフにはもったいない。
No, she's a fantastic woman.
キリエさん、あまり挑発しない方がいい。
どうかんだ。今は耐えよう。
そうね。どうせ私たちはまな板の上の恋よ。今さら何もできやしない。
私に対し威勢のいい口を叩くことはできるがな。嫌いではないぞ。そういう女は。ベアトリーチェも初めはそういう女だった。
親方様、そろそろ本題を。さっきから脱線しまくりです。
おお、そうであったな。すまぬすまぬ我が友よ。
Yeah, why are we here? Like, why have you shown up?
それでは本題に入ろう。そのために電話を用意しておいたのだ。シャノン、知恵が回るな。 もう隠さなくてもよいぞ。
Okay, so yeah, he's fully aware of it. I sort of had that idea.
それは私が用意させたのだ。
失礼いたしました。
Shannon quickly withdrew herself, and the telephone was revealed.
クラウスよ、ゲストハウスの孫たちに電話をかけるがよい。そして我がテストを、試練の始まりを彼らに告げるのだ。
Renove motioned for Kraus to pick up the receiver.
嫌だと。
ほほう。取引の余地がどこにあるというのか。
No, not necessarily.
お前が電話をせぬというなら、孫たちにはチャンスさえも与えぬ。後ろ宮家はこれにて終わり。お前たちは直ちに生贄だ。
直ちに生贄なら幸運よ。あなたたちの眼前で子供たちを先に生贄にされた方が辛いと思うけれど。
Oh, come on, that wouldn't happen.
生贄の順番は親方様が決めます。勝手なことを言わないように。
リア、今私の名前を縮めようとして詰まったでしょ。
してません。
What is there to shorten?
だから勝手に人の名前を略さないように。
女は実に
かしましいですな。
Hey, you'll never hear me admit that. Okay, well, I guess we're done with that chapter. So I guess that is the next step here in the story. Never fucking mind, we're going right back to the future, which is possibly the present. The hell? The clinic that Nanjo had opened and later passed on to his son still existed on Nijima. This aged doctor was Nanjo's son, but the atmosphere about him was very different. Whoa.
誠に申し訳ないのですが、特にお話しすることはありません。
Okay, I can see a little bit of Nanjo in him, but also, goddamn, he did not take after his father in eating, like, full-course meals on, like, a regular basis or anything. He's kept up on his, like, on his health, it seems. He's pretty slim in comparison. Nanjo's son said that very indifferently.
あの島の事故がワイドショーなどで非常に不謹慎に取り上げられて以来、後宮氏の主治医であり友人でもあった父にも大変心外な関心が多数寄せられました。そのいずれもが何の根拠もなく、また父のそれまでの業績を汚すものでした。私はそれら全てについて未だに強く憤慨しています。
無理もないことと思います。私も同じようなものですので、私など6つの時から延々です。
そうでしたね。これは失礼。
The doctor finally remembered that Ange was also a victim who had been exposed to the same curious eyes as he had been.
そんなあなたなら当時の件にもう関わりたくないという私どもの気持ちもお分かりでしょう。
Now that is understandable, but let's learn a little bit more about you here. Let's pull you up. So Nanjo Masayuki, Nanjo's son, took over the Nanjo clinic. Unlike Nanjo, he gives a slightly dispassionate, indifferent impression. After the commotion surrounding Rokkenjima, he grew to completely despise the press, and never again did he attempt to speak of what had happened at the time. He used to have a daughter who was afflicted with an intractable disease, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to live out her natural lifespan. Okay. Not too much to get out of that, but I mean, we can clearly tell he doesn't want to be involved.
それを事件だと騒ぎ立てたがるのは無責任なテレビと雑誌だけです。彼らの態度には心底うんざりさせられますよ。
Nanjo had been bathed with attention for being one of Ushiromiya Kinzo's few friends. Because of that, there was probably an aggressive and persistent rush among the witch hunters and the press to use Nanjo's son as well, a surviving relative, as a source of information. The doctor went on, criticizing the press indignantly.
お気持ち、よくわかります。私生活に至るまで監視を受け、プライバシーも肖像権も、果ては人権さえも認められてたかわからない私ですから、そのやり場のないお怒り、よくお察しできます。だからこそ、私の人生をここまで台無しにしたあの事件は、一体何だったのか、 どうしても知りたいのです。それでここへ来ました。私もあなたと同じ当事者です。雑誌記者でもインタビュアーでもありません。そこを誤解しないでください。私は道楽でこんなところまで来たんじゃない。私を見下すのもいい加減にしてください。あの事件で狂わされた人生の傷跡比べをするならば、私とあなたでは比べ物にもならない。
Ange spoke sharply, and that's why she's so great. The doctor, who had not imagined that he would be talked back to in such a forceful manner, couldn't help but fall silent. From Ange's perspective, the doctor really was whining over nothing. She really didn't want to be looked down upon. It was about time to let him understand how many days had passed for her before arriving on this island. The doctor realized that he had said something wrong and remained silent for a while, looking uncomfortable.
当時のことを思い出すのは苦痛でしょうが、ご存知のことがあったら何でも教えてください。もちろん口外はしません。私は私の人生に決着をつけるために今日ここへ訪れています。私は18です。あの事件は私の人生の12年を奪った。そしてこれからも奪い続けるでしょう。私は6歳のあの日からずっと暗闇に放り込まれたままなんです。そんな私でも知る権利がないとおっしゃるんですか？
いや、失敬。たちの悪い連中ばかりが来ていたので、私もつい身構えてしまったようです。失敬したのをお詫びします。わかりました。他言無用を誓っていただけるなら何でもお話しします。
ありがとう先生。ではお願いします。何でも結構です。
I wonder if there's really much he can say.
父は後ろ宮市の主治医であると同時にチェスを通じた友人同士でもありました。その親交は後ろ宮市が六軒島に移り住んできた当時からのとても長いものでした。
どのくらい仲が良かったのですか？
相当だったようです。チェスの縁で先方の屋敷に厄介になることも少なくなかったようです。私の口から言うのもなんだが、後ろ宮氏は非常に気難しい方でした。そして父はそんな人間と付き合うのに長けた非常におおらかな人だった。孤独な後ろ宮氏にとって稀な友人であったことは想像に難しくないでしょう。
当日は親族会議でした。後宮家の親族会議は資産やその運用などについて厳しく問われるさながら経営会議のようなものだったとされています。
Yeah, more or less.
そのような席にまで出席を求められるほどに南條先生は信頼を得ていたわけですね。
父は純朴な医師であり、後宮家のような富豪の財産運用について助言できるような立場にあったとは思えません。おそらく当時の後宮氏は健康状態が優れられなかったでしょうから、その買添えとして呼ばれていたのでしょう。親友の父ならおそらく口も固く、親族会議上の秘密もきっと漏らさないと信頼されていたに違いない。
当時の後宮金蔵はかなり健康状態が悪かったのでしょうか？カルテが残っていたりはしますか？
事故の当日はカルテを持参していたのでしょう。後宮氏のカルテは残念ながらフォルダごと失われています。
Yeah, how convenient.
父のクラン家ですし、私も詳しいことは分かりません。
事件の前後、何か気になるようなことはありました？
あるにはあります。ですが、非常に誤解を招きそうなので、あまり言いたくはありません。
何ですか？それを教えてください。
For a while, the doctor beat around the bush. But after saying that much, he wouldn't be able to fool Ange by dodging the subject. He eventually gave in, and after making Ange swear herself to secrecy again, told her,
実はあの事故の数日後に私の自宅に郵便が届いたのです。
What the fuck?
郵便？
それはとても奇妙な郵便でした。差出人が私になっているのですが、それは身に覚えのないものでした。何者かが私の名を語って出したということです。宛先は北海道の礼文島。北方領土の話を抜きにすれば日本の最北端の島です。その宛先人がなんと礼文島の住所ではありますが、父の名前だったのです。
What the fuck?
しかし送付先住所が間違っているらしく、 住所不明の付箋が貼られて、差出人である私のところへ戻ってきたわけです。
That is very roundaboutish. What the hell? It was truly a strange tale. Nanjo's son's name was written as the sender. However, he said that he hadn't mailed the letter. In short, that meant someone had faked his name and sent it. The destination was Nanjo Turamasa. And I didn't read where that was. Hold on. Hokkaido's Ribun Island. There we go. But the lot number written on it didn't exist, so the local post office had been unable to deliver it and instead sent it back to the sender, Nanjo's son.
中身は
本当に他言無用でお願いします。
Is it another rendition of the story?
私も非常に迷惑しているんです。かといって捨てるわけにもいかず。
Well, come on. The doctor stood up and faced a bookshelf. There was packed a group of dictionaries that could only have been ornamental, meant to make it very clear that the owner was an intellectual. When he pulled several volumes out from there, a large brown envelope peeked out from behind them. He took that out and tossed it onto the desk. It had been carefully sealed with cellophane tape, and its faded color and dryness made it clear that it had been sealed 12 years ago.
くれぐれも他言無用でお願いします。
Being so persistent that it was annoying, the doctor removed the seal with a paper knife. Then, when he tilted the envelope, an already open mail envelope spilled out. The envelope had a weight to it, hinting that there was something other than a letter inside. Well, let's get to reading. The recipient was certainly Nanjo Turamasa. Just seeing that was a huge shock. Following that incident, Nanjo's corpse had not been found, and he had eventually been treated as dead after going missing under extraordinary circumstances. And despite that, this letter addressed to a Nanjo in Hokkaido existed. One could almost take this as a sign that he had faked his own death and escaped to Hokkaido.
南條先生は本当に北海道に存在を、あるいは同姓同名の人物が北海道に。
父が何かの事情で事故を逃れ、北海道で存命していたのだとしたら、私たち家族にとっては事情に関わらず嬉しいことです。私も初めはその可能性を考えました。しかし、この封筒の送付先住所は存在しないのです。
I think another thing to consider here is that Nanjo was one of the last ones to die. And typically, if you're in the last 4, you should be going to the Golden Land. What actually happened to everybody at the very end?
つまりこの封筒は届くはずのない郵便なのです。
送付者が正しい住所を書き損じた可能性は？
もちろん否定はできません。ですが、住所の番地を見る限り、どうもそうは思えないのです。
北海道礼文島礼文郡礼文町 1-2-34-567。
Up until Ribun City, it's fine, but I just couldn't wipe away the feeling that the sequential number after it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, was a little insincere. It felt like a fake number that some kid had made up.
おそらく明らかに存在しない住所をデタラメに書いたのでしょう。この封筒は初めから存在せず届くはずのない住所に送付されたと考えるのが自然だと思います。
Yeah, it's very obvious. If the destination address doesn't exist, mail is generally returned to the sender. But even in the case of an incomplete address, the local post office will often courteously, and to the best of its ability, research to find whether the sender's intended destination exists. Whether they can, or whether they still can't find it, the mail is sometimes returned after an investigation of several days. I think that's similar to how it is with the United States Postal Service. I don't really know the ins and outs of how it works over here, let alone how it worked back then over in Japan. But I think, you know, having the sender's name and address as who you're intending this to go to is a really good way of, in such a roundaboutish way, getting that to them through a fake destination address. So somebody wanted this to go to who they forged the sender as, Nanjo's son. that was the intended destination all along, but they utilize Nanjo himself as a way to get this to him. But why? It seemed that the same thing had happened with this envelope, and the stamp was postmarked on October 3rd, the day before they ended up on Rokkenjima. It was postmarked on Nijima. Nijima was a long way away from Red Moon Island, and on top of that, the destination was also nonsensical. It had taken more than a week for the mail to be returned. In other words, there was probably a high chance that having the envelope returned to the sender after an unfixed amount of time had been the goal from the very beginning. That's what I'm saying. Why do something like that? I mean, typically you need a sender address on the envelope in order for it to be signed or to be shipped off. I don't know if that's a huge requirement necessarily, but it basically allows for less prying eyes, especially if it's being sent somewhere that it probably shouldn't be. And plus, like, it does make you curious if somebody forged your name and address as the sender and included the destination as something that didn't exist. You know? It piques your interest once it gets back to you rather than it being maybe junk that you just throw away. This was all done with the intention of Nanjo's son getting this and opening it up and seeing what was actually inside. Even before asking what it was that had been sent, this envelope was already wrapped in a mystery. Oh, this is interesting. After getting the doctor's permission, I tilted the already open envelope. From the inside came a small folded letter and a small key with a number plate attached. Then a magnetic card slid out. A112 was engraved on the key's number plate. I didn't know what it meant. The magnetic card was pitch black and it had gold characters engraved in it. Members was written in English. The jet black gold lettered card design made it feel like something very high class. But of course, I didn't have a clue what kind of card it was just from that. I unfolded the letter. Its contents were extremely brief, and only the following was written. Let's see. Whoa. What is this? 07151129. Also written was the name of a certain massive bank known throughout Japan, as well as the word Central Branch. That was all.
これは
貸金庫のカードと鍵、そして暗証番号でした。それも普通の貸金庫ではない。特別な顧客のみに許されているらしい不気味な貸金庫でした。
After he finished putting his affairs in order following his father's funeral, he had visited the bank. Pin and key and card. There was no doubt that something of great importance was kept there, and he had been naturally curious about what it might be. At first, he hadn't known what to do. The card wasn't something he had owned in the first place. When he mustered up his courage and showed the card to a bank clerk, he was then switched to a clerk of clearly high status and was guided to a large vault on the 4th basement. The security on the way there was strict. The doctor had himself stored valuable items such as real estate transcripts in safe deposit boxes before, but this was something on a whole different level.
私の使っている貸金庫の手続きと違い、カードと暗証番号、そして鍵を持っているならば、本人確認は行われないというシステムでした。ですが、とにかく厳重な金庫室で、その物々しさに怯えました。こんなところに預けざるを得ない、どんな物騒なものが待ち受けているのかと。
それで？
カードをリーダーに通すと、暗証番号の入力を求められました。そしてそこにある8桁の数字を入力すると認証され、金庫室への入室が認められました。すごい光景でしたよ。まるで SF 映画のような世界だった。薄暗い銀色の広大な部屋にびっしりと金庫の扉が埋め尽くされているのです。
He had entered that room along with the clerk. It seems that as soon as the card was read, the vaults he had a right to were determined. So that safes he could open were lit with a green light, while those he couldn't open were lit with a red one.
A11 には それらの金庫のうちの一つを示すものでした。ちなみにそれ以外の金庫にもずらりと緑ランプが点灯していました。20個以上はあったと思います。あるいは他の一角にももっとあったのかも。いずれにせよ私の鍵は A11 にのみ、他の金庫の中身を確かめる術はありませんでしたが。
Okay, well, what was in this one? As the clerk watched, the doctor had unlocked and opened the safe. What was in there? When he did, a safe drawer like a large cabinet had opened, and an expensive-looking what the fuck? Duralumin? I'm having a fucking brain aneurysm trying to pronounce that. Case peeked out. I gotta be honest, that one was throwing me for a loop. Michael S.K. and his English, ladies and gentlemen. That was carried into a separate room where for the first time the clerk left and he was introduced to the contents.
中身は
現金でした。
Cash.
現金どれほど？
新札の100万円の束はちょうど厚みが1センチになると聞いたことがあります。それがこれだけのジュラルミンケースの中にびっしり詰められていたのですから、多分1億はあったでしょう。
What the
数えたわけ
fuck?
ではないからわかりません。手すら触れませんでしたから、私はすぐに直感しました。これは危険な金だと。
Oh yeah, if you have no connection to it, it is dangerous. It isn't normal to store a whole 100 million yen in cash in a case in a safe like that. It's much easier to deal with it if you put it into an account and turn it into numbers. When someone is unable to do that, then it's clear that there's something wrong with that cash.
私は頭が真っ白になり、すぐに関わり合ってはならないと直感しました。
The extremely smart move.
それで一切手をつけなかった。
はい、そのまま施錠し直し、元の金庫に預けて立ち去りました。この鍵やカードも捨てようと思いましたが、何が起こるかわからない。そのため誰にも内緒で12年もの間、あれが何の金だったのか、私にも未だにわかりません。
この封筒をお借りすることはできますか？
いえ、この場で見るだけにしてください。
わかりました。ではちょっと失礼します。調べ物を。
I took One-chan's grimoire from the knapsack I had set down. Then I opened to the page with the paragraph Beatrice had written to One-chan and compared the handwriting on both. Is it the same? There was no mistake about the characteristic handwriting. The one who had sent this 100 million yen in cash was Beatrice herself. But what is it? Something's bugging me. What is it? What could it be? I mean, there's a whole lot of this that does... What? Who the fuck are you? There's a whole lot of this that just doesn't make a lick of sense, honestly. Really, at all. Beatrice is somebody who shouldn't exist, but we have somebody moving around behind the scenes here, setting things up in such a really strange and hard to follow way.
そんな郵便物が確か届いた気がしますわ。母ちゃん、あれはどこにしまったっけな?
The same envelope and contents had been sent to Kumasawa's son, who had once lived with her, but he had been very busy in the days since, and seemed to have forgotten about it while running around all over the place. However, its strange contents had apparently stayed in his memory, and he remembered as soon as Ange mentioned it to him. After a bit of a wait, his thin-lipped wife found the envelope, complaining that he always forgot where he put things right away. Was it also, like, this envelope that we're being shown here, I don't know if that's just to, you know, show us, like, hey, an envelope is, you know, the focus here, or if it's the fact that it's the one-winged eagle, and it has the master's stamp, Kinzo's stamp here. The modus operandi for the sender and recipient was the same as Nanjo's son's. The sender was made out to be Kumasawa's son, and the recipient was Kumasawa Chiyo. And the destination address was in Okinawa Prefecture. Okinawa Prefecture, Yayama County, Yonaguni City, 1234567. Yonaguni Island was at the westernmost tip of Japan, and the lot name was the exact same sequential number that had apparently been chosen without much care. Now it was certain. This envelope was definitely sent with the goal of having it be returned to the sender. Its contents were exactly the same. a letter with the pin and the bank's main branch written on it, a magnetic card, a key with an attached number plate. The inscription on the number plate was A113, the number right after the one on the key that had been sent to Nanjo. Most likely, inside the vault was the same kind of case, I'm not going to try and pronounce that again, packed with 100 million yen in cash. But why? And who, you know?
That's an
optimistic way of looking at it. Let's learn a little bit more about you, shall we? So, Kumasawa Sabikichi. All right. So, Kumasawa's son works at the Nijima fishing harbor. He must have gotten his carefree, big-hearted personality from Kumasawa. Kumasawa had many sons, and a number of them were away from land as fishermen. It was purely coincidence that it was possible to come into contact with them, as he had happened to be involved with the fishing harbor. Hopes are on him that he might have heard Chatty Kumasawa let something important slip, but...
中身もよくわからんし、薄気味悪いんで、ずっとほったらかしにしてて、今日まですっかり忘れてたんですわ。お嬢さんはこれが何かご存知なんですかね？ひょっとして、あんたんとこにも同じものが？
どうしたんです？園児様。
Yeah, wait a minute, what the fuck?
うりゅう、頭痛？
ごめん。頭が痛い。刺さってる。知ってる。
知ってるって何を？まさかこの封筒、園児様のところにも？
I've remembered. A strange envelope was also sent to me 12 years ago. After losing my entire family, I was depressed. But it was a really strange thing to come in the mail, so I still had a faint memory of it. It was a strange letter, which I had no memory of sending, but which had me as the sender. I forget the destination address, but the named recipient had been Ushiromiya Rudolph, my father. I remember how disturbed I was when I got a letter I thought was from father, opened it up, and found a key and a card that I didn't really understand. I felt let down and threw it away somewhere, I think. Where did I put that envelope? I probably lost it somewhere in the chaos that followed. By now, I have no way of checking its contents. However, I have a general idea. I'm sure the contents were the same. Without a doubt, there had been a key, a card, and a note with a pin inside the envelope.
Beatrice, これは何のつもりよ。あいつは全ての遺族にこんなふざけた金をばらまいたというの？死んだ後も苦労するなんて許せない。
I don't know if it's necessarily mocking, but it has to be a message of some sort. Sakutaro acted nervously. As I looked at his worrying face, my agitation began to cool off bit by bit.
ごめんなさい。ベアトリーチェ憎しは今に始まったことじゃないわ。あの6歳の日に、もうすでにあの魔女と縁があったことに驚きと怒りを感じただけよ。
この12年間、園児様はずっとベアトリーチェ様の呪縛に囚われてきた。これがそのまさに呪縛の証となるのかもしれません。ですが、どうかしっかりそれを打ち破るための旅でもあるはずです。
そうね。頭に血を上らせたって何の役にも立たないわ。
True that.
冷静に考えなくちゃ。これはどういうことなの？遺族に1億円をばらまく意味は何？挑発だとでも言うの？ベアトリーチェめ。
エンジェ、落ち着いて、ウリュウ。
As Sakutaro buried his head in my stomach, he urged me to stay calm. I took another deep breath and started thinking.
この封筒の送付はつまり、ベアトリーチェによる事件の計画性を裏付けるものかしら。
It can't be that simple. I really do believe there's more going on. But what do I know? This is very strange, very interesting nonetheless. And we're in chapter 14 now, gamers. There we go. We're making some crazy progress here. This one went on a little long, but man, I don't know. When curious and interesting stuff gets brought up like this, I just can't stop, you know? And I really don't want to stop here, but we should, you know. We'll wrap up this one and we'll continue on in the next one, see what the hell is just going on with these envelopes, and there might be something else too. But this handwriting, there is somebody that was behind this. Somebody that is capable of doing this. But who, you know? The so-called Beatrice. Anyways, thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed this one. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take it easy.